My name is Jim Davidson. I'm with Bronto Software, and I will be your presenter today, but I'm also going to kick off with a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box, and we will definitely get to those a little bit later. If you're having any technical issues of your own, feel free to address those there, and we'll have someone reach out to you about any issues that you're having. All right, so I am the manager of marketing research at Bronto Software. I'm responsible for a lot of the white papers and just different industry studies that we do here at Bronto. And today we're going to be talking about a lot of post-purchase strategies and ways that you can leverage post-purchase data in your email programs to speak to your customers. So the title we have today is Just Married, and we're going to talk about how you can really bond with customers after they purchased. All right. So first of all, I want to talk about a bit of some of the misconceptions or history that we have as marketers with order data and email marketing. And there's definitely a notion that it's complex, it really drains your resources, you're going to have to pull in your technology team. If you do get the data, it's not really going to be something that you can leverage. A lot of times it was really encoded or complex or difficult to get your head around. Which would lead you to really struggle with where is the data actually located and where are these messages to even begin with. So part of the struggle can just be the beginning, even just getting started. And there's a stat that I have here of over half of marketers feel that it's a struggle for them to even share data within their own companies. So, okay, sorry guys, just addressing some of these technical issues that we have. All right, I think we have some smooth sailing going on now. All right, so now where we are really is that a lot of these processes have been streamlined, and which puts you more in control. A lot of your applications that you're using to send your email messages are able to take this data in and really provide a lot of opportunities for you to message to your customer either near that purchase process or after they've purchased. So we're going to talk about how really that bond is created with your customer. So I want to start out with a bit of an exercise. You know, we all hear about big data, and a lot of times if we're talking about purchase-related data, it gets real kludgy and overwhelming and easy just to throw your hands up like that woman we saw a couple slides ago. So I want to do a bit of a conceptual exercise before we get into this, just to really loosen this up a little bit. So when I say walking down the aisle, what's your first thought? So get that thought in your head, and just interested to see how it lines up with a couple different perspectives on that. So first of all, from the consumer's perspective, excuse me guys, from the consumer's perspective, walking down the aisle can be an overwhelming task. There are a lot of options for them to choose from. They know what they're there to get, but they're really being messaged about tons of different products that they could choose from. A lot of different marketing messages can really create a lot of noise for them to figure out exactly what they want and what they want to put into their cart. Now, for us as marketers, the aisle has a bit of a different shift. It's really up to us to be the ones in control, to make sure that we're serving as many people as possible while still providing that one-to-one conversation, not just the connection between brand and customer, but to really facilitate that conversation. In this case, if we were flight attendant, remembering that Bob in 23C likes his Bloody Mary extra spicy, and the next time we come down the aisle to really keep that information and to make sure that Bob is having a good flight. So if we bring those together, we really think about the differences between those of how we serve our customers and how our customers are really getting messaged in today's market. Sorry, guys. I apologize for this. And really, that's where we start to create the bond between the customer and the brand. So today we're going to go through this in 3 different angles. We're going to look at the wedding, where really that bond is created. We're going to go through the routine, so while we're getting some of that data and we're starting to leverage it. And then we're going to shift to some long-term engagement and really figuring out how we can make it last. All right, so looking at the purchase decision, this is really the proposal phase. And I have here, what she said, yes. What she thought, in one way or another, is I'm done shopping, I'm ready to buy. So there's a commitment, especially now when we're seeing a lot of our customers either showrooming or taking advantage of comparison shopping or even scanning QR codes to do comparison shopping on mobile apps. There's a lot of influence that happens before that commitment is actually made. And that's something that we really need to be aware of as we're helping our customers down that purchase path. So we're going to look at 3 different ways to get that data, to get the yes. We're going to look at the gadget perspective. We're going to look at the human perspective of that consumer, and then more of that technical, machine-driven data that we all, that's all such a part of our daily life. So as we go through this, I'll keep these noted at the top just so you can follow along. All right, so first of all, when we look at all of the different devices that our consumers are receiving our messages on and how they're digesting all of the communications that we're sending to them, how they're researching our products, there are really just a ton of different ways that they're actually seeing that. And then ways that they're exchanging ideas is a whole other layer. So whether it's Facebook or if you started to create pin boards, and we all have to also remember Amazon is out there too for a lot of price comparison and reviews. And then we all have databases that store information, whether it's our social network databases or it's our email marketing databases. And then a lot of you probably overlay this between your in-store activity and your online activity, so further fragmenting and branching on all that data. Now, what this really leads to on the consumer side is a lot of emotions. There are a lot of different ways, whether it's excitement or frustration or confusion, across all these different channels and devices that really can be a frustrating experience for our customer. So we're going to look at some ways that we can help calm some of those emotions for our customer. So first of all, I want to look at device deluge here. And this is a stat from a Google study that came out last year where they were asking consumers how they plan to shop for the holiday season. And this stat, of course that was for the holiday season specifically, but I don't think any of us would say that mobile usage is going to decline. Definitely people were using it during the holidays and they continue to do so. So when we look at this stat, 80% of consumers are planning to use multiple devices simultaneously. So this isn't just sofa surfing on your tablet and then hopping over to your laptop after you've had dinner. This is at the same time really using multiple devices. And that's a behavior that we really need to factor into not only what we're sending to our clients, but when we're sending it and what that content is. So when we look at that, when we break that down further, we see that smartphones and computers are the ones that are used in tandem most commonly, but behind that is introducing the tablet into that mix. And definitely since the holidays, we have seen an increase in tablet adoption. So it's something that you need to factor in beyond just your smartphone optimization. So a mantra for you to remember when we're looking at this post-purchase data collection is why where is as important as what. So it's not just looking at what data you're collecting it, but where you're collecting it and where the consumer is actually giving it to you. So whenever you're building your forms or you're creating a channel-specific strategy, remember this, that optimization is great, but customization is even better. You can make it look good, but if you're really looking to make that consumer experience seamless and to also get the information that you're going to need to power your programs, customizing, while time-consuming in the initial setup, could really provide better information in the long run. So if you look at this form from Amazon, this is the desktop or laptop experience of the form that you see when you start the checkout process. So we can see that they're asking for name, they're asking for email address to be entered twice, mobile number, and then a password to create your account. Now the same page on the mobile device is customized. So it's not just optimizing the information that they have for that first sign-in page in their purchase process. It's really customizing it to that mobile customer that really it's more challenging for them to input information, and it's decreasing that barrier for them to actually submit their order. So the changes that we see here are that email address is not asked for twice, which is a best practice to help improve data hygiene, but really you need to balance that out with helping your customer get closer to submitting that order. And then mobile number, which was an optional field to begin with, is completely thrown out. And if you look at this stat here, that almost a quarter of smartphone users are purchasing from their devices, and I would venture to even say more so on tablet devices. This is something you really need to factor into your current purchase path. If you haven't already, look at multiple mobile devices, tablets, and smartphones, and see how that experience could further be optimized, and use this Amazon example as one to go by. So another interesting consumer behavior that relates to the purchase process is what I call lane changers. So we have consumers that are using multiple devices at the same time, but they're also using those devices in different locations. So they are putting them down, picking up a different device. They're looking at shopping on their computer at work and then leaving work and perhaps using their mobile device to do comparison shopping in your store. So 85% will start on one device and finish in another. Now, you can't ignore 85% of any group. So that's really them, your consumers are dictating this behavior is something that they find to be part of the shopping process, and you need to make sure that you're addressing that. So if you look at how they're exchanging that information, the top two behaviors here, both at 45%, I call share and save. So if we look at this more from the conceptual viewpoint as opposed to the specifics, consumers are really trying to share that information across devices or save it. So there's a convenience factor for them in having that information transfer from one device to another. So looking at the first one, bookmarks and shopping carts. So of course we're all used to shopping cart abandonment and sending out our abandonment messages, and we'll look at a few examples of those a little bit later. But we also need to be aware that our consumers are intentionally using the shopping cart as more of a wish list program. So a touchstone for them to look at information when they log into their account, regardless of which device they're on. So you have a couple options there of either creating more of the wish list application within your carting process, or looking at ways that you can really optimize your cart to save items for later, so that you're really putting that behavior out front and letting your customer know that you're trying to make this as easy for them as possible. The other way is sending an email or a link to them to themselves. So in this case, if you are on your site, this is a great option to send a reminder to myself or to send this product information to your email address, or to look at ways to leverage email content itself to make that more informative for a later shopping experience as opposed to the initial sale or promotion awareness phase. All right, so another mantra for you here is that data collection is essential for you. Of course, we're all data dependent, which is a good thing. Don't want that to sound negative. But it can be annoying for your customer to really enter this information, whether it's privacy concerns or just the amount of time and investment that they have that's blocking their shopping activity from actually buying. So we did a study last year. It's in this white paper we have, From Abandon to Conversion, and we looked at the actual carting process. So from the product page, carting to actually purchasing or abandoning the cart, and then what were the marketing efforts after that cart was abandoned. And what we found here is that one page was the smallest number of pages between carting to order checkout, but they were almost 5.5, almost 6 pages was the average between carting to checkout. So if we look at our typical web browser customer on a laptop or desktop computer, this may be an acceptable amount of pages depending on how you have your path breadcrumbed out and really set that expectation on the process for your consumer. When it comes to a mobile consumer, that's a lot of tapping they have to do from that initial peak of interest of carting the product with the intent to buy and then potentially abandoning. We found the upper end of this went up to 9 pages. So I would say, look at this. You probably are really aware of all the pages that are involved in your purchase process, but have you actually stacked them up against what the averages are out there in the industry to see where you fall on this line? There's definitely going to be some ways to optimize. Even if you're one of those brands that has 1 page, that may be a bit daunting for someone to have to enter all of their information on 1 page, or could cause concern that perhaps everything, all the information isn't being entered that they would actually need for the purchase. All right, so I want to give you a sneak preview. We have a new research study coming out probably in the next week or two that is where we asked marketers, online marketers, people who are actually selling online, about the data they collect during the purchase process. So I'm going to share some of that data with you now, even before our white paper comes out. So one of the questions that we asked these online retailers was if they collect product-level data for shoppers who are browsing on their website. Now, what was interesting is that over half of these retailers were collecting this data, which is great. We did find later in the study that a lot of these retailers were struggling with how to actually use that data. So again, collecting but not leveraging data can put you in that trap of a bit of data overload or big data headaches. But if we look at those that aren't collecting the data, about a third were not able to collect the data. So looking at that perception of not being able to collect it versus really the technology that is available to you to collect it is something that you really should revisit. A lot of your partners could help you out with actually starting to collect that data and find ways that you can use it. So one of the focuses that I would really recommend changing, a different perspective that a lot of us who made in this industry for a while, is looking at the difference between conversions and your order data. So I want to define these to make sure that we're speaking the same language here, because the conversions can mean a lot to a lot of different people. So traditionally when we're looking at email data, conversions would mean orders or purchases that were made as a result of an email that was received. So somebody receives an email, they click on a product, and they make a purchase, and you go to your email service provider, and you are attributing that sale to a specific email. So if you want to look at people who've purchased in the past 6 months, a lot of you would and send an email to them, a lot of you would traditionally depend on that conversion data to define that group of purchasers. But really, that view can be a bit outdated and also short-sighted. If you incorporate in your order data, which is any purchases made, regardless of channel or where that attribution should go, whether it's email in store or just someone who came to your site, specifically maybe from search, to be able to leverage that data brings in a whole different level of power to you as a marketer. This also not only helps for repeat purchasers, but when you start to look at lapsed purchasers, and we'll look at some examples of that a little bit later, you really want to have a better definition of people who haven't purchased and not just depend on email to be the sole data source of that information. You may have someone who's very actively purchasing on your website, but is not actively purchasing from an email, or is actively purchasing in store but not very active online. So getting this larger view of who a purchaser actually is will help you to make your programs more sophisticated but also relevant to your customers. All right, so when we look at some of these specific data points, you may be asking, this is great, there's a lot of data out there, but you keep talking about data overload. What data do I actually collect? So we're going to look at this from a couple different perspectives, and here's the why, what is as important as where. Flipping that around from the early example that we saw, we really do need to be aware of the information that we're asking our customers from those two perspectives. One is marketers, what do we need, what's important to us to be able to market to our customers effectively, but also what is the consumer willing to give, and how long will they actually give us to enter that information. So we have the must-haves here, and this is a bit of the snooze fest, hence the guy who's taking a nap. Hopefully none of you guys listening right now are doing that. But you have the information that you have to collect, so first name, shipping, payment info, all that good stuff. So you want to make sure, too, that you're collecting this information in a way that it relates specifically to the order and that it's not confusing with any of the other profile or consumer-centric information that you're asking for. This could make the data entry from the consumer's perspective a bit daunting or confusing. So if we move to some more of the power packing data points that we have here, one is looking at getting an explicit opt-in from your customer during the checkout process. One of the data points that we found from our research study was that over half of retailers are not collecting email opt-in during the checkout process. And this is huge. That's really going to limit you. A little bit later when we start looking at some of these specific programs, you're only going to be able to send your transactional messages, so your order and your shipping confirmation. And it's going to limit you from marketing to people who've actually purchased from you, which is a very important set of your customers. So definitely making sure that you are collecting email opt-in during the checkout process, that it's very clear to your customer how they're opting in. A lot of sites have confusing checkboxes to check if you want to receive emails or to uncheck if you don't. So make sure that that is very clear and obvious to your customers and that you're getting the option to market to them afterward. And then if we look at the newsletter options and category interests, this provides an additional layer of insight to your customer outside of what they're actually purchasing. Especially during Q4, where you may have a lot of people who are gifting and not necessarily buying for themselves or buying in a product category that they're interested in. This is going to help you to really understand, what does this shopper want to see from me going forward? So balancing out how you're asking for that or how detailed you're getting with those categories is something definitely worth testing, but making sure that you're introducing those elements to some degree will definitely help to give you a more sophisticated post-purchase program. And then one data point that seems minor to a lot of marketers but is a huge revenue generator is asking for birthday. And the reason I recommend asking for this during the purchase process is that consumers definitely feel that they are in a secure environment when they're entering their credit card information and all of their personal information. So they may be more willing to share their birthday with you during this process, especially if you let them know that they're going to receive a special offer around their birthday. And those messages lead to huge open clicks and conversion rates too. So it's just a great piece of information to throw into your checkout process. So I want to look at a few data points to avoid. And the reason I have this sign here with the railroad tracks as opposed to like a danger or warning sign is because I want you to look at this from the consumer's perspective. And we've all been driving and we get stuck with an oncoming train that lasts for what seems like 20 minutes, and we're just stuck there waiting and waiting and waiting. And that's really what can happen to your consumer during the purchase process if you're using any of these elements. So you want to be aware of any interstitials or any way that your consumer is having to leave the path of purchase. Now, during our study from carding to abandonment, I found some brands that had completely dedicated pages of their checkout process to signing up for their company's credit card. And this would not show any information related to the purchase that I was trying to make. It didn't show the product, the quantity, the price. It was just a completely out of order page. Now, I'm sure this brand had done a lot of testing, and they were probably having an acquisition effort for their credit card, so great for them. I hope it went well. But for me as a consumer, it was a really confusing step in the process. So while this information may be important to you and you might be getting a lot of pressure from different teams to incorporate this into the purchase process, this could negatively affect sales. And not just the abandonment of the purchase, but it could really reflect negatively on your brand that you were being asked to take that extra layer of information or engagement with a brand that you may not be ready to do. This can also just make your consumer really confused. They may think that they have been thrown out of the purchase process in some way, and they're going to have to start over completely. So a mantra for you here is to avoid complicating simplicity. This is really a simple process. Carding, enter information, submit your order. When you start to really make it too complex, that's where your consumer's going to start to lose some of that momentum that they had when they actually carded the product, and you could lose that sale. And then when we look at the product-related information, a lot of this is back-end data. And I threw up the caution tape here because a lot of folks are collecting this data and either not using it, which in some ways is okay because you're not misusing it. But I do see a lot of brands that are misusing this information, and the result is that they're sending out marketing messages that are really technical and robotic. And we're going to see some examples of those in a couple slides. So, I want you to see this information because these are data points that are accessible to you and that you can get, but we want to look at how do we use them effectively. So, you may see here the product URL or the product description and think, well, how am I really going to use that layer of copy or imagery in my messages? And we're going to look at ways to use it and ways to not use it going forward. But a great list for you to either get started or to find gaps in what you're currently collecting. Okay, so at this point, our consumers made it through the purchase process. They've decided to order. They've made that commitment. And now we're moving on to the honeymoon. So it's actually colder than normal weather right now, so I'd much rather be at the beach. But one data point I want to throw in here that really doesn't have anything to do with online marketing was a stat that I found in a study from restaurants. And they found that tips were higher when a server introduced themselves by name. So 8.4%, which brings the tip up to 23.4%. So if we look at that in our world, really incorporating in that human component, that voice of your brand, especially into purchase-related information or purchase-related messages, are going to be able to help you connect with that consumer when they've purchased and really drive some of that engagement. And also, when we look at this, we want to look at that period. If we continue with this restaurant analogy, if you're at a restaurant and you've ordered your food but you haven't received it, there's a lot going on in that phase before you actually get it. You're hungrier than you were before you ordered. There's a lot of anticipation about that meal coming, and you still want to make sure that your server's giving you attention and that you're not being ignored. And we have to remember this phase for our consumer too, that there's this whole period between when they've ordered ordered a product from us and when they've actually received it. And a lot of brands ignore that phase or really don't give it the attention that it needs to have. So I want to compare this to either going here on your honeymoon, it's lovely wallpaper, or going here. What is the experience that you want your customer to have while they are waiting to receive your product and after they've made that purchase? So what I'm showing you here is an actual order confirmation that someone in our company received for a wine rack that was $500, so not a low price point item and not just a typical consumer good here. This was something that they really weighed buying and then actually committed and made their purchase. And I spoke to the person who made this order, and they showed me the website and the experience that they had while they were shopping and checking out. And then they also shared the shock when they received this as their order confirmation. So while a lot of you may not have something as primitive, looking at something like this from eBags, which is a purchase that I actually made, these are really two distinct experiences that your customer's having after they've ordered. And you really want to make sure that you're avoiding that technical lack of brand voice that we're seeing on the left, and that we are continuing that experience that our customers had on their website, on your website while they were shopping. So we're going to go through this eBags example and look at some different components, and hopefully you'll be able to identify some elements that you can incorporate into your transactional messages. All right, so working from the top down of this email, and these are some of the back-end data points that I showed earlier on that are included here. So we have the order number and order date. Now, order number to itself is not something that's going to provide direct value to your shopper. So why does it have such prominent placement in your email? Well, it's a huge customer service touchstone, especially if you have a call center and someone has any issue with their order. Having that order number front and center is going to cut minutes out of your call center time, which we all know is extremely valuable, and help your operator connect this order to the actual customer. So then shipping and billing addresses. This is especially important if you do have a lot of gifters purchasing on your site, or if you do have a lot of business consumers. And this is going to be able to quickly identify where the order is going versus where it's billed. And also it can give the consumer an opportunity to locate any errors that may have happened with perhaps a wrong address was entered or there's a typo within the address. So this can help with returns or larger customer service issues down the line. And then when we look at continuing that momentum or that excitement around the purchase, when or especially around the time when the person actually committed and hit submit, what we're seeing here is the actual product that was ordered, the product description, an estimated delivery date, which is in addition to providing just tracking information, this really sets an expectation with your customer about when they're going to receive their item. It takes a few questions and a few steps out of the process. And then you're also seeing on the bottom right here the discount that was received and the fact that shipping was free. So as a customer, I felt I was getting a great value, and it was reinforced here when I received my order confirmation. So any type of purchase anxiety that your customers may have, especially if you do have consumers that are penny pinchers or watching their budgets, reinforcing these discounts or incentives that you've offered them for the purchase can really go a long way in making them feel comfortable with what they've ordered from you. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that the loyalty program is next to what I paid and what I saved. So if I definitely took advantage of the offer they had for free shipping and discount, I may want to receive additional savings going forward. So if you do have a VIP program or any type of loyalty program, it's worth including in these order or shipping confirmations. But one thing to note in these transactional messages, order and shipping specifically, is that you need to balance out the promotional information that you are including. So to comply with CAN-SPAM regulations, it's a good rule of thumb to have 80% of the content in your message relate directly to that purchase, but you have about 20% where you can include promotional information or marketing messages. So you want to balance that out from the content perspective, but also in the location of this information. So make sure that you're including the order information above any promotional information, or that it is clearly obvious when someone receives this message that it's relating to their order. All right, so continuing on, this is more of the subsection of this email, and there were multiple content units that were here. And again, these are great reference points for your customer. These are not necessarily pieces of content that they have to read and understand, but if they need to go back to their order or shipping emails for any questions, you're going to be there with answers or a place to guide them. So these may be hard to read, but so I'll go through them. The first one is shipping and order tracking. It sets the expectation with the customer that they're going to receive a separate email when their order is shipped. So if you are having any customer service issues, or if your products take a little bit longer to get out the door, this could be a great way to set that expectation with the customer that they're going to be alerted when that product is on its way. Providing additional services. So in this case, if the order was a gift, you can send an e-card announcement, which is definitely a nice perk for someone who may be gifting and they want to let the person they're sending the gift to know that something is on its way. And then customer service awareness. I have a stat here on the bottom left that 2/3 of consumers think that the accessibility of customer service contact information is the most important feature of customer service. Now, this is worth doing an audit not only on your emails but also on your website to make sure this information can easily be found. A lot of this information is buried several pages into FAQs, or you may have a question database where people can type their concern and they're directed to more information, which is great to cut down some of your call center questions, especially from more of a public forum like your website. But when you get to something as specific as an order or shipping email, these are really specific concerns. So making sure that you have that customer service information when they can actually call. So here we're seeing customer service hours, and then how they can return or what your return policy is could really go a long way for any customers that are experiencing issues. And then we're seeing additional, more of a catch-all customer service option that includes an email address, a page on their website, and a phone number. So really covering all the bases on how your customers can contact customer support. Okay, so when we look at more of the promotional information, this is the sidebar that we saw in the email. We're seeing two different sections here. Now, historically for a lot of you, you may not have a product recommendation engine that can serve up data in your email program, so you may be doing this more on the product category level, which is definitely fine and can be very effective. But if you are using a recommendation engine, you want to be really careful that you're making a distinction with, especially with certain products. So what we're seeing here, if you remember a couple pages back, I bought a hard shell luggage set, and I'm getting a you may also consider of 2 more hard shell luggage pieces, which are very similar products. And these also have price points that are, a bit higher and more in line with the luggage set that I purchased. So, if you just bought a luggage set, what's the likelihood that you are going to buy an additional piece of luggage, especially one that doesn't match the set that was just purchased? But in the bottom half of this section, I'm seeing more related products, so products that augment or really enhance what I've actually purchased. So having this distinction between the products, could really be effective to increasing that upsell for someone who's already made an order. And then the study that we found, over half of retailers are not including any additional offers in their order and shipping confirmations. So you may not be doing something as advanced as this, including similar or related products, but do make sure you're including some type of promotional information to encourage those one-time buyers and to repeat customers. All right, so now we're going to move on to making it last. At this point, our customers receive the product, and we're really trying to focus on them more for long-term engagement and as a purchaser. All right, so we want to make it last, and I want you to meet Karam and Kartari, and they hold the Guinness Book of World Record for the longest marriage, which is 87 years, and as of today, 93 days. So you really want Kim and Kartari. You don't want Kim and Chris. So the reason that you don't want them, of course, they were married for 72 days, but really they've been married for 522 additional days. So when we think about this from our customer perspective, we're looking at very short-term engagement and interest, followed by what could be a bit of a lag after they've actually made that purchase. So from our study, we found that 76% of retailers are not customizing campaigns for their purchasers after their order and shipping confirmation. So you're taking all that information related to what they bought from you, the fact that they've bought from you, and you're not tailoring any marketing messages to them, which is pretty massive. I mean, after your wedding, you're ignoring the commitment. So I just want to give a visual here to really ring this home of how many retailers out there are not doing this. So we definitely will see some stats later for post-purchase messages and how effective they can be at driving sales. But if you are one of these 76%, it's really time to meet with your team and incorporate some of these ideas on how to speak to your purchasers more effectively. So some additional stats, 27% of your subscribers are repeat customers. So you have a quarter of your subscribers are buying multiple times, and 41% of these sales are coming from your repeat customers. So you really can't ignore them. I mean, this is a very significant population that is ready to buy. So we're going to drill into a few ways to take some of those data points that we talked about earlier and launch post-purchase programs. So I want to show you this example of, this may be more messages than you want to send. It's very comprehensive, but I want to give you an idea of what a really robust post-purchase program could look like. So we've seen really optimized post-purchase programs increase sales from them 16% year over year and can represent a third of all of your email revenue. So these are really revenue-driving emails. This is where you're going to be able to pick up some of those additional sales for your email program that you're probably under a lot of pressure to find. So if we go through this list, we're seeing this spreads out over about 3 months. So really, taking that one order, but finding ways that we can speak to our customer and have that conversation in an extended way that's relevant, mind you, that's not really overwhelming to them, but it's really going to enhance their experience with our brand and hopefully drive toward an additional sale. So the first messages here are the transactional messages, so your order and shipping confirmation, pretty typical. A lot of you are probably sending that. But next we see some customer service options. So a welcome email without an incentive, so really welcoming them to your email program, setting the expectation of what they can receive and how frequently they should expect to receive messages from you. And then later down the line, different customer service options, so letting them know how they can reach out if they're having any issues with their order. A satisfaction survey, so this is a great way to improve the process from checkout to receiving your product and to find any customer service issues that are happening along the way. And then tips and tricks email, so ways that they can really use their product to the maximum. So there are some promotional messages that are included in the stream, so a coupon for their next purchase, and then a remail to really drive or encourage that repeat purchase. And then data and content, so asking your customer to create or to complete their customer profile and to share additional preferences with you that you can use for segmentation down the line. Introducing your social networking presence or your blog or any other pieces of content that your customer can explore. And then at the end of this is more of a share your thoughts. So another catch-all for your customer to really share information with you about what it's like to be a customer. So to look at a couple post-purchase real examples of post-purchase messages, this first one is a post-purchase coupon. So a way to encourage that repeat purchase for your customers, thanking them for their order, providing additional ways where they can check out, whether it's online or calling customer service. And we're seeing at the bottom here an additional way for the recipient of this email to ask any questions. And this is a clever mix. So, if you're looking at, well, how do I really create content that adds value to that customer without being annoying to them? So this email was for someone who had purchased a Blu-ray player. So rather than, how's it going with your Blu-ray player? Here are some Blu-rays that you can buy. This really goes in a different direction. So it's encouraging an upsell with how to get better sound out of that Blu-ray player, and then a bit of education and also product awareness and a bit promotional of explaining the differences between some of the cables that you could use and also how to protect your purchase with a power surge protector. So if you have existing videos that relate to your top-selling products, incorporate them into your post-purchase series. It can be a great way for your customers to continue engaging with their brand, but could also solve any problems that they're experiencing in actually using your product. So moving to product demo and setup, we're looking again at some of these back-end data pieces. So you want to use these with caution and really make sure that they're effective pieces of content in your messages. So this example from Apple, it's a proactive customer service touch. It's addressing a lot of the questions that people who are new to Apple devices may have. So the first is the operating system, so an educational and awareness about their operating system. And then iCloud, which is a way to enhance and also connect other purchases that may have been made. And then additional services, so ways to use your device and really maximize your interaction with it. And then an upsell, so ways to encourage longer-term engagement by getting folks involved with apps and start making purchases that augment what they've already bought from you. So I'm going to go through a tale of 2 recommendation emails, one good, one not so good, and we're going to look at the ways that data actually drove the content and how it was effective to the consumer. So first, looking at Amazon, which a lot of times Amazon emails, especially the recommendation emails, may come off a little bit systematic or mechanical, but this one was really good as far as a post-purchase message. So if we look at the top, we're seeing a friendly product name. So this actually can be put into a sentence and make sense to the consumer. They bought the Hoover Platinum Lightweight Upright Vacuum and Canister. And then for related products, we're not seeing another vacuum. We're seeing additional products that you can buy for that vacuum. And then as we scroll down the bottom, well, perhaps I'm all set and I'm bought those at a store, but I really am enjoying my Hoover product. I may want to shop for more Hoover products. So if you have top brands or top selling categories, make sure that you're including that additional link where your customer can continue shopping on your site. Now, for Circuit City, I bought a second monitor for work, and I received this email. And there are a few misses in here. So first is the personalization mess, and it just says dear and no name. So personalization can be tricky if you have null values or you collect full name as opposed to just first name. So make sure that you're safeguarding any personalization to accommodate null values. In this case, dear could just have gone completely away, and I would have engaged with this email in a very different way. And then when we compare this to the previous Amazon example, they're telling me that I bought the IP193ABB, like this really long product description, which doesn't really connect with the rest of the copy, but is a back-end data piece of product name. So when you're looking at your product names, you want to make sure that you do have that friendly name as in addition to the one that has all of your great search terms in there. And then moving down to the actual product section, we're seeing similar versus related rear its head again. So the product that I purchased was this top monitor, which was really cheap and not very good. But it's giving me an option to order today, which I don't really know why I would want to reorder something I've already purchased, but that call to action is there. But then if we look at recommendations for my purchase, there are a few things going on in this section. First of all, it's another monitor, and the likelihood of me buying another monitor was low, at least for me as a consumer. But then the product information, we're seeing no rows found. So this is where some of that back-end data from the recommendation engine was not populating correctly. So you do want to make sure that that information is not only populating, but it's making sense in the context of your email. So a better choice here may have been to offer a cable that was compatible with my monitor, which is something I actually did have to go out and buy. All right, so looking at reviews and ratings, this was part of that longer post-purchase series that we saw a few slides back. But if we're going to look at a couple examples here and different approaches that you can take. So balancing out data versus design is really important, but also looking at the timing. So a lot of these messages are timed after the order, so 30 days after the order's been made or 2 weeks after the order's been made, but you really want to make sure that your customer has enough time to use your product. And not only will this help give you better reviews on your site, but it'll also decrease the number of reviews that that are negatively reviewing a product based off of issues with shipping or with ordering. So you want to make sure that you have all those issues resolved and that the person has really used your product and that they're writing a review that is going to add value to people who are prospects and considering buying that item. So in this case, we're seeing a bit of a long copy, but if you need to explain to your consumers, then definitely go for that. But then the review perspective that we're seeing here, we have the review now call to action with all grayed out buttons, which is okay. It's definitely letting me know that I'm going to be able to stake my claim on that star rating. But we're going to look at the next example in a way that could actually provide additional clicks. Now, with these messages, we see excellent engagement. Open rates are huge over your regular promotional emails. And then we also see really large click-through rates. So great way to get people back to your site, even if they're not necessarily creating a review, they're back in the environment and they may be ready to shop. So comparing that to this Best Buy example, here we're seeing the product is actually displayed in more of that cart product listing search results way, but we're also seeing how other consumers and how many consumers have rated this specific product. So if I'm in line with these ratings, it's great. I may want to share my opinion, but also if I feel differently, this could encourage me to go through and find new ways to use my product or to explain why I'm not enjoying the product. And then rather than including additional promotional opportunities, Best Buy is letting their customers know about how they're giving back or different areas for them to engage with the brand outside of just purchasing. So there's a trade-in opportunity, a recycling program, and also for students, different ways where they can actually return products in extended time frames. So if you don't want to confuse your message of getting that review and rating, look at other ways that you can have that brand conversation with your customer without necessarily being promotional. All right, so then looking at reorder reminders. So if you have any products that need to be replenished, anything that's perishable, some examples here are vitamins or cosmetics, then this is an automated program that you can set up based off of that order date. You can either ask your customer when they would like to be reminded or base it off of just typical usage values. So this example from 800 Contacts is giving the consumer the opportunity to reorder or modify their prescription. Very clear calls to action. It's going to be a great service to your customer, but also a very simple way and automated way to drive repeat purchases. So this is a mini case study here for a Bronto client who sent Char Music, and they sell violin strings and other strings for instruments. And their best practice is for their customers to replace their strings every 6 months. Now, there's an education factor here because a lot of people just ignore that or they forget, but there's also a huge opportunity to drive additional sales. So you may think this is something that's really complicated. I've got tons of SKUs. How am I ever going to incorporate something like this into my automated programs? Well, they started simple. They picked their top-selling products, and they created dedicated emails that were manually sent out to segments of customers who had purchased those top products. So that's what you're seeing on the left is one of the dedicated emails. So this was a test phase to really keep it simple, keep it focused, and see how their customers responded. Well, they responded very well. You can see the resulting stats once the program was fully launched that open rates were very strong, and conversion rates compared to their regular promotional emails were 21% higher. So when they rolled this out to a larger product line, being able to have that customized email for each product really wasn't going to be possible as far as incorporating imagery and specific links. So what they did is they combined a lot of their top sellers that would be very easy for their customers to recognize into the final email, but they were able to personalize the product name. So don't feel like you have to roll out with the most sophisticated program. Really taking these incremental steps into the automated post-purchase programs can give you insight into how your customers are going to respond, but also what are going to be the most revenue drivers and how to really simplify some of these approaches. So one question I'm asked quite often is, when is a purchaser considered inactive? Now, this will really differ for you based off of the age of your audience and the product line that you have. But I wanted to share this information from the research study that we have coming out in a couple of weeks, that the largest group of retailers found that 3 to 6 months was about the time that their customers became inactive. But what was interesting is when we overlaid companies that were more heavily dependent on email communications, that really shortened down to about 30 days. So take this as a bit of a gauge for, perhaps you don't really have a period of time where you're considering your purchasers inactive, but really start to look at that data if you haven't already. And one program that you can automate based off of that target that you find for an activity is a lapsed purchaser email. Now, this is different from re-engagement, where you have subscribers who are not opening or clicking in your emails. And this is specifically looking at people who have made a purchase from you, have actually ordered and had that full customer experience, and getting them back to buy. So this is a great opportunity for you to look at their average order value. If you can go as far as like product color or the offer type that may have influenced an actual sale, a way to bring those elements back to an email that speaks to that initial purchase could be a great way to drive that additional purchase. And then also using urgency to really make this stand out above any other order that you have going on could be a great way to drive that sell. All right, just looking at time really quick, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. All right, so before we get to questions, just want to let you guys know about some additional resources from Bronto. So we have a white paper called Uncovering Missed Revenue Opportunities, which goes into more detail for some of these post-purchase programs, but also a lot of other automated programs for your customers. So a great way to step through the customer life cycle even before or after the purchase has been made and identify some revenue-generating opportunities for your email program. And we also have our Tips and Tricks newsletter, which you can sign up for at bronto.com/tips and tricks. And this is where we share or we announce all of our white papers. So the research study that we have coming out in the next couple of weeks will be announced in this email. So a great way for you to be notified of that. But we also share any blog posts or any customer success stories like the one you saw from Shar Music in this newsletter. So definitely feel free to sign up. We don't bug you too much on there. All right, so we have a few minutes left for questions. I'm not sure if we have anyone who has audio working on the line.
Yes, I do, Jim. This is
Oh,
Rachel.
there you are. Hello.
Hi. So we do have a few questions.
Great.
The first one is it safe to send emails to customers even if they didn't subscribe to your newsletter during checkout?
Yes and no. So you can send transactional messages. So your order confirmation email, your shipping confirmation email, and then if you also have any like warranty or recall messages, which hopefully you don't have any huge warranty changes or recalls, those can technically be sent out to someone who has not opted into promotional messages. You always want to speak to your legal counsel if you have any questions. So we aren't giving direct legal advice. And then to also repeat what I said earlier as a best practice is to keep those messages 80% related to the actual transaction, but you do have about 20% to be promotional. So that's the gray area that you have, and that's also why it's so important for you to collect opt-in during that checkout process, because you lose all the promotional opportunities that I talked about at the back end of this presentation.
Okay, great. And then the next question is, which should be top priority, optimizing existing post-purchase messages or filling in gaps?
I think you should really gauge where you are with some of the examples that we saw today. If you're sending out an order confirmation and shipping confirmation now, do they look like that ruined honeymoon that we saw earlier, or do they look more like that luxury hotel? That's going to be the first communication that your customers receive. So from a customer service perspective, those are two messages to focus on right now if you are a bit behind the needle there, I guess. But if you have those messages already, incorporating in the products and incorporating in some of the additional elements that we saw, then I would say, start to look at that list that I had of post-purchase messages that were broken down between promotional messages, customer service touches, and start to look at some of those gaps. Really, there are a few in there that are that will drive revenue. There are a few that will cut down costs to your call center. So really look at what's your concern. What are you trying to focus on right now, and what issues do you need to resolve? And that can be a good roadmap for you.
Okay, great. And the last question is, what's the one thing I should take away from this webinar?
Oh, I think the main thing to take away is to look at those very first slides that I saw. If you have felt overwhelmed about expanding your post-purchase program, if you feel like this data is out of reach or it's going to be too complex for you, get rid of that notion and call your partners now, get your team together, and start your plan of attack. That's really the thing that we saw earlier, that 53% of brands are collecting a lot of this data, but a lot of them aren't using it, and that's really where I see a lot of people get stalled. So if you're going to take anything away, don't be overwhelmed with all the potential programs that you can send out, but just get started and get to know your data better.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all we got time for today. Thanks again to all of you who are able to join us. We will be sending a link to view the webinar on demand tomorrow, as well as a white paper on the topic. The webinar will be made available at Bronto.com as well as the eTelease event website,